It's right about time to bring you up to speed what's happening globally and in Nigeria. We begin with Greek oil tanker ablaze and adrift after Red Sea attacks. Report says Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to end bid support Trump. Walz calls VP nomination honor of my life at DNC. New Zealand's White Island volcano erupts, halting flights, and Gaza protests continue at National Democratic Convention DNC. A Greek-flagged oil tanker with 25 crew members on board has caught fire after numerous attacks and it's adrift in the Red Sea. On Wednesday morning, the Sounion was attacked by over a dozen people on two small boats who fired several projectiles at the ship when it was almost 77 nautical miles, 143 kilometers west of Yemen's port city of Hodeidah. The Greek Shipping Ministry and the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations UKMTO said. There was a brief exchange of fire, the UKMTO said. In a later update, it said the ship reported another attack that caused the fire and led the vessel to lose engine power and its ability to maneuver. There were no reports of casualties to the crew, made up of 23 Filipinos and 2 Russians. Greece's Maritime Affairs Minister Christos Stylianides condemned what he described as a flagrant violation of international law and a serious threat to the security of international shipping. Greece said the ship could have been hit either by missiles or drones. Last November, the Iran-aligned Houthis started to aim international shipping near Yemen, saying the step was in solidarity with Palestinians over the war in Gaza. The Houthis have not claimed responsibility for the Sounion attack. Delta Tankers, the ship's operator, confirmed the ship was adrift and had sustained minor damage. Sounion was on its way from Iraq to a port close to Athens where there were many refineries, the Greek port authority said. The ship is the third Delta Tankers operated vessel aimed by the Houthis. Earlier this month, the Liberia-flagged Delta Atlantica and Delta Blue tankers were hit in separate attacks. In another incident south of the Yemeni port city of Aden on Wednesday, a merchant ship reported 5 explosions in close-by waters. UKMTO said, later identifying the vessel as the Panama-flagged SW Northwind 1. The crew was reported to be unharmed and the vessel was proceeding to the next port of call. It added, Houthi attacks have caused many ship owners to avoid the Red Sea region and send their vessels on lengthier and costlier routes around the southern tip of Africa. They have sunk 2 ships and killed no less than 3 crew members so far. US 2024 election. According to the report, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is planning to drop his bid to become the next president of the United States and endorse Republican Party nominee Donald Trump. Kennedy, the third child of liberal icon Robert F. Kennedy, is considering announcing the end of his campaign during an appearance with Trump in Phoenix, Arizona on Friday. Several media outlets reported on Wednesday, citing people familiar with the matter. The reports come after Kennedy's campaign announced early on Wednesday that he will give a speech in Phoenix about the present historical moment and his path forward. Kennedy, who initially ran for the Democratic Party nominee before going independent, could boost Trump's chances in November's election if he drops out, particularly in battleground states that were won by razor-thin margins in 2016 and 2020. Opinion polls have constantly shown Kennedy, an environmental lawyer and longtime vaccine skeptic, drawing more support from Trump than the Democratic nominee Vice President Kamala Harris. In a poll in July, 33% of registered Republican voters expressed a positive view of the Kennedy's coin, compared with just 15% of registered Democrats and independents. While Kennedy never looked likely to challenge Harris or Trump for the White House, his campaign attracted double-digit support in polling at its peak before dropping to about 5% in recent weeks. In an interview on the Impact Theory podcast earlier this week, Kennedy's running mate Nicole Shanahan said he was considering withdrawing from the race as staying in would risk a Harris victory. In an interview on Tuesday, Trump said he will be open to appointing Kennedy to a cabinet role if elected. Still on US 2024 election, Tim Walz has officially accepted his nomination to be the Democrats' vice presidential candidate in November's US election, rallying the party faithful in Chicago with a message of freedom and hope. On Wednesday, Walz said, "It's the honor of my life to accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States," as he took to the stage at the end of the third day of the Democratic National Convention (DNC). Walz, the 60-year-old governor of Minnesota, was a relative unknown until Kamala Harris picked him as her running mate just 2 weeks over. Walz talked of his upbringing in a town of just 400 people in Nebraska, his service with the National Guard, and his experience as a teacher. He highlighted the significance of preserving personal freedoms, taking a swipe at Republicans who have rolled back abortion rights, adding that, in his experience, most Americans consider such issues to be private matters. The crowd, many holding Coach Walz banners in reference to his years coaching football, cheered and waved. Freedom was the theme of the third day of the convention, with Democratic VIPs such as ex-President Bill Clinton taking the stage, as well as celebrities from singer Stevie Wonder to John Legend to comedian Mindy Kaling and media personality Oprah Winfrey. While the message was overwhelmingly one of optimism as the speakers endorsed Harris and Walz, there were also plenty of swipes at Trump, who was portrayed as vain and self-obsessed. There were deafening cheers as Winfrey, who later described herself as an independent, walked onto the stage. She rallied the crowd with a powerful endorsement of democracy and the need to get out and vote. Last month, Harris emerged as the Democrats' candidate after President Joe Biden stepped aside. The convention has also featured several Republicans who have turned against Trump, who was president from 2017 to 2021. Away from U.S. 2024 elections, now the White Island volcano in New Zealand has erupted, sending a huge plume of ash into the sky and grounding several flights. National carrier Air New Zealand and 10 flights were cancelled on Thursday as volcanic ash drifted across flight paths at some domestic airports. Government scientists cautioned that Wakari, as it's owned to the country's indigenous Maori, could continue for weeks to months to come. The volcanic island lies around 50 kilometers off New Zealand's North Island and 200 kilometers from Auckland, the country's biggest city. Once a popular tourist destination, it has been off limits since 2019, when a massive eruption of ash and steam killed 22 people who were visiting the island as part of a cruise. Satellite images showed minor eruptive activity started earlier in the month, research institute GNS Science said in a monitoring bulletin. The GNS said it believed that latest activity was part of the typical eruptive cycles documented on Wakari. Scientists said some people on New Zealand's main islands might smell volcanic gas or suffer mild irritation to their eyes or throats, although the impact was likely to be minor. Earlier this month, New Zealand raised its volcanic alert level to 3 out of a maximum of 5 levels. Back to U.S. 2024 election, and with connection with Israel-Gaza war, Palestinian rights protesters see abundance of parallels between the present Democratic National Convention in Chicago and the last time the gathering was held in the Windy City amid a violent crackdown on anti-Vietnam War protesters. Wednesday's chants echoed through the streets surrounding the United Center in Chicago, where thousands of Democratic delegates and supporters are assembling to celebrate the official nomination of Kamala Harris as the party's presidential candidate. Just as Democratic candidate Hubert Humphrey lost the 1968 race to Richard Nixon, the demonstrators are cautioning Harris that they will not support her unless she ends the United States' unconditional support for Israel. Wednesday was the third day of the convention and the third day of the Gaza protests. Police officers dragged a row of bicycles, forming a moving chain on the side of the road along the march to keep protesters on the approved path. Whenever the protest came close to the convention center, a wall of dozens of police officers blocked the road leading to the security perimeter that had been formed around the venue. A police helicopter hovered above the protest throughout. Janan Shahid, one of the activists leading the chants, agreed that Wednesday's protest had been the largest of the 2024 convention. The protesters expressed anger and pain through their chants and posters over the war on Gaza, where Israel has killed over 40,000 Palestinians in the past 10 months, but the demonstration remained peaceful. On more stories now, Canadian rail shutdown wreaks major impact on North America's economy. According to management of the two companies, Canada's two major merchandise railroads have shut their operations, locking out 9,000 members of the Teamsters Union who operate the trains and dealing a potential blow to both the Canadian and US economies. Closely a third of the freight handled by the two railroads, Canadian National CN and Canadian Pacific Kansas City Southern CPKC, crosses the US-Canadian border, and the shutdown could disrupt operations in a number of US industries, including agriculture, autos, home building and energy, depending upon how long the shutdown lasts. The company said in a Thursday statement shortly after the start of the lockout at 12 o'clock a.m. local time, delaying resolution to this labor dispute will only make things worse. CPKC is acting to protect Canada's supply chains and all stakeholders from further uncertainty and the more widespread disruption that will be created should this dispute drag out further, resulting in a potential work stoppage occurring during the full peak shipping period. The shutdown will drive home how closely connected the two nations' economies are, with several industries depending on the free movement of goods across the border for their proficient operations. Some U.S. auto plants, for instance, could briefly close if they are unable to get engines, transmissions, or stampings done at Canadian plants. U.S. farmers might find shortages of fertilizer, and U.S. water treatment plants close to the Canadian border could run out chlorine they use to purify water. This is the first time that both major Canadian railroads have closed at the same time due to a labor clash. The most recent work stoppage in the industry was a 60-hour strike at Canadian Pacific in 2022. Before that, there was a 9-day strike at Canadian National in 2019. Thursday's action is different from a strike in which union members refused to report for work. In this case, management is the one telling the closely 9,000 Teamsters that it can't work. In African scenes, over a dozen aid trucks entered Darfur from Chad. According to a United Nations spokesperson, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, said that over a dozen aid trucks, including some from the World Food Programme, WFP, and the International Organization for Migration, have now crossed into Darfur from Chad via the Andre border crossing. In New York on Wednesday, Stefan Dujarric said WFP trucks were carrying sorghum, pulses, oil and rice that will benefit some 13,000 people who are at risk of famine in the Karenik area of West Darfur. For its part, IOM says the essential relief items delivered to Sudan will support more than 12,000 people in need, he added. Dujarric reiterated the Adre crossing from Chad is the most effective and the most direct way for us to deliver humanitarian aid to Sudan at a scale and speed needed to respond to the huge hunger crunch in the country. The World Food Programme trucks can cross into Darfur from Adre and then reach major distribution points in the very same day, basically in one day, he added. Dujarric went on, in the meantime, our humanitarian colleagues continue to engage with the Sudanese authorities to facilitate additional trucks coming in the coming days and months. We will need a constant supply of humanitarian goods. It is critical to sustain that flow of food and nutrition assistance into and across Sudan, where more than a dozen areas are either at risk or in famine, he added. WFP is scaling up food assistance there and aims to support more than 8 million men, women and children by the end of this calendar year, Dujarric concluded. On health matters, WHO mobilizes as Mpox outbreaks resurges in Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. The resurgence of the Mpox virus, also known as monkeypox, is now a concern for numerous countries, with many cases reported across multiple regions. The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, has been the epicenter of this new resurgence. So far, no less than 18,000 cases have been reported in DRC, with at least 500 deaths attributed to the virus. More than 70% of the cases have been reported among children. Amid the ongoing insurgency in the DRC, the World Health Organization, WHO, is working to ensure a proper response to curb the spread of the virus. Dr. Samuel Boland, the incident manager for Mpox at the WHO Regional Office for Africa, said they are adapting fresh strategies to reach even the conflicted regions in the DRC as part of their response to the resurgence. According to the Congolese health minister on Monday, The DRC hopes to receive vaccine doses to tackle its mpox outbreak by next week. The WHO stressed that the vaccines are urgently required. The outbreak in several African countries triggered the WHO last week to declare mpox a world health emergency. The WHO stresses that prevention mechanisms might be the most effective way to curb the spread of the virus. The newest update from WHO reassures that this is not another COVID-19 pandemic. We take a short break now, and when we come back, I'll bring you stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Now, stories from Nigeria, and we begin with PDP crisis. Damagun to Clark, I won't be intimidated. Ambassador Umar Damagun, acting national chairman of the People's Democratic Party PDP, has promised not to let critics of his leadership style to intimidate him into abdicating his responsibilities. Damagun said this in reaction of Chief Edwin Clark and a former party spokesperson, Kola Olugbon Dion, who both criticized his handling of the party's affairs in Rivers State and allegations of anti-party activities leveled against Chief Wesam Wike. Clark had accused Damagun of indulging Wike, whom he accused of working with external influences to weaken the PDP to pave the way for the All Progressives Congress APC to continue in office. The elder statesman was mostly displeased that despite Wike's alleged anti-party activities, the PDP acting national chairman hasn't dared to take disciplinary action against the Federal Capital Territory minister. On his part, a former national publicity secretary of the party, Kola, according to report last week, urged members of the party's National Working Committee, NWC, to pass a vote of no confidence on Damagun over his handling the Rivers case. The party's chair, while inaugurating the PDP's National Disciplinary and Reconciliation Committees, took time to respond to them. Earlier, while inaugurating the Disciplinary and Reconciliation Committees, explained that the two committees were being inaugurated at the same time to save time. Damagun described the event as marking a major milestone in the party's journey towards healing, understanding, and growth. And finally on the news, Atiku says Nigerians' future mortgaged by Tinubu family and others. Ex-Vice President Atiku Abubakar has stated that the future of Nigerians has been successfully mortgaged by President Bola Tinubu, his family, and associates. Atiku said he believes that even after Tinubu leaves office, it will be closely impossible to break these bonds. In a statement by his media advisor Paul Ibe, Atiku compares Tinubu's integration of his business interests into Lagos public enterprises to his efforts at the federal level. Atiku, who was the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party PDP in the last general election, said, and I quote, just as Alpha Beta, Primero, and others act as Tinubu's proxies in Lagos, managing major sectors and generating revenue for him and his family, he has started to replicate this at the federal level. He expressed amazement at the operations of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Corporation, NNPC, and how the government-owned oil company had put its retail arm under the control of OVH, a company in which O&O, led by Wole Tinubu, owns 49%. Atiku regretted that his aim to privatize the NNPC and add its transparency has been overshadowed by what he described as the criminal hijack of the NNPC by corporate cabals around the present president. He acknowledged that the NNPC and its leadership are under legislative probe, but stated skepticism about the credibility due to the vested interests of those conducting the investigation. The ex-vice president also commented on the recent revelation that the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway project is under litigation. A recap of major stories says Greek oil tanker blaze and drift after Red Sea attacks. Report says Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to end bid support Trump. Walz calls VP nomination honor of my life at DNC. New Zealand's White Island volcano erupts, halting flights, and Gaza protests continue at DNC. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.